Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin in approximately 10 minutes.
What was this?
Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin in approximately 5 minutes. At this time, We ask that you please find your seats and silence all electronic devices. Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin in 2 minutes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our joint ROTC Spring Commissioning Ceremony. We thank you for joining us today to celebrate our cadets who are about to be commissioned as second lieutenants in the United States Armed Forces. I'm Captain Benjamin Fable, Assistant Professor of Aerospace Studies for Air Force ROTC Detachment 90. I will be your narrator for today's ceremony. I'll provide cues for when to stand and when to be seated. We thank you for your support and attendance this evening. During the playing of musical honors, military members in uniform will face the individual being honored and stand at attention. During the playing of the national anthem, military members will stand at attention while civilians attendees place their right hand over their heart. As a reminder, please silence all electronic devices. The ceremony will begin shortly. Please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of ruffles and flourishes, the singing of the national anthem by Cadet Taylor Putman, followed by the invocation by Cadet Nadia Howard. Apologies, we appear to be having some technical difficulties with the music.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we gather here this evening to honor these soon-to-be second lieutenants. Through their hard work, dedication, and steadfast character, they have prepared themselves for this moment and have left a lasting impact on Detachment 90, the Ram Battalion, and the community they serve. As we celebrate their accomplishments, we ask that you bless them in their next chapter of their lives. Watch over them as they begin this new adventure, and grant them the strength, wisdom, and courage to serve their nation honorably and to protect those we hold dear. In your name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Cadet Putman, for an amazing rendition of the national anthem, and Cadet Howard for your inspiring words. Please be seated. We are honored to have special guests and faculty members with us today. Please hold your applause until each group has been recognized. Lieutenant General Retired Richard G. Moore, Managing Member of the RGM Group, Senior Advisor at TEC Solutions and Etro-Key Labs, and former Deputy Chief of Staff for Plans and Programs, Headquarters, U.S. Air Force, the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. Dr. Michael Galchinsky, Vice Provost and Dean for Undergraduate Affairs for Colorado State University. Colonel Greg Young, Professor of Aerospace Studies, Air Force ROTC. Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Weiss, Professor of Military Science, Army ROTC. Sergeant First Class Thomas Oliva, Army ROTC Senior Military Instructor. Staff Sergeant Christopher Santos, Non-Commissioned Officer, Air Force ROTC. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Lieutenant General Moore's wife, Kristen Moore, CSU's 16th President, Army Amy Parsons, Dr. Lisa Youngblade, Provost, Colorado State University, Mr. Eric Ray, Vice President of Human Resources, Colorado State University, Dr. Tracy Richards, Dean of the College of Natural Sciences, and Lieutenant Colonel Retired Matthew Tillman, representing the university's President's Office. Additionally, we would like to welcome all university officials, guests from the ROTC Advisory Board, faculty members, family, friends, and supporters from around the community who are joining us today. As a land-grant institution, Colorado State honors the indigenous inhabitants of our local area by opening this event with our University Land Acknowledgement. We recognize the importance of the land acknowledgement and of raising awareness of the contributions that indigenous people make in natural resources research, education, and management. Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and people. This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other native tribes. We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed. CSU is founded as a land-grant institution, and we accept that our mission must encompass access to education and inclusion. And, significantly, our founding came at a dire cost to Native nations and peoples whose land this university was built upon. This acknowledgement is the education and inclusion we must practice in recognizing our institutional history, responsibility, and commitment. It is my honor to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Weiss, Professor of Military Science.
All right, with protocol already being established with our esteemed guests, family and friends, welcome. And to our soon-to-be commissioned second lieutenants, just wait. Today marks a significant milestone, not only in your lives, but also in the proud tradition of our Army and Air Force. As you stand before us in your new uniforms, you embody the commitment, sacrifice, and honor that define our Army and Air Force. You have worked tirelessly to reach this moment, and I commend each of you for your dedication and perseverance. As second lieutenants, you are stepping into a role that carries immense responsibility. You are not just leaders, you are the embodiment of our values. And let each of these words sink in as I say them. Integrity, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, and personal courage. Your actions and decisions based on those values will shape the future of our Army and Air Force and impact the lives of those you lead. Embrace this responsibility with humility and courage. Remember that leadership is not merely about authority. It is about the ability to influence and inspire those around you to achieve their best in fostering an environment where every soldier feels valued and empowered. Lead by example, accomplish the mission, and always look out for the welfare of your soldiers and airmen. As you embark on this journey, you will face challenges. Some will test your resolve and character. Second Lieutenant Verstrati, your platoon at Abrams may be called on to be the first through the breach. Is your platoon trained and ready? Second Lieutenant Holloway, your platoon may be called to provide timely fires effects on the enemy to enable Second Lieutenant Verstrati's breach to succeed. Are you and your platoon trained and ready? Second Lieutenant Stock, yeah, right there. Your military police platoon may be responsible for security on vital supply routes to get ammunition to Second Lieutenant Verstrati's Abrams. Is your platoon trained and ready? And Second Lieutenants Langley and McGee are aviators. Your air crews may be called upon to quickly move from one end of the battlefield to the other to provide timely effects. Are your crews trained and ready? When you find yourself in those moments, whether in combat or at the National Training Center, lean on your training, trust in your team, and uphold the values that brought you to this point. Seek guidance from your mentors and never hesitate to ask for help. The strength of our Army and Air Force lies in our ability to support one another and our NCO Corps. Today you join a legacy of heroes who have worn this uniform before you. Honor their sacrifice by committing yourself fully to the mission and to your fellow soldiers and airmen. Your journey has just begun, and I have every confidence that you will rise to the occasion. Congratulations once again on commissioning as second lieutenants in the greatest Army and Air Force in the world. We are proud of you, and we look forward to seeing the incredible contributions you will make to our nation. And never forget where you came from. Proud to be Ram Tough. And now to introduce Dr. Michael Galczynski, the Vice Provost and Dean for Undergraduate Affairs here at CSU. He's responsible for developing and reviewing undergraduate programs, general education, academic appeals, and undergraduate policies, as well as overseeing both Air Force and Army ROTC. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Galczynski to the stage.
Good evening. What a wonderful evening in this beautiful place. Cadets, remember this night. Remember what you've achieved here. And thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Weiss. Thank you also to all the leadership of our Army and our Air Force ROTC and the ROTC staff that so capably run this unit on campus. It's my great honor to speak to the 2026 graduating class of cadets this evening. In my role as Vice Provost and Dean for Undergraduate Affairs, I've had the distinct privilege to witness the leadership, experiential learning, service, and scholarship of this group. Cadets, this day represents a major milestone in your lives. We celebrate your promotion from cadet to the rank of second lieutenant in the U.S. Army or Air Force. Your work in the classroom, on the field, in the air, all speak to your commitment to a comprehensive education in military science, your major field, and what we might call the science of life. You're a true representation of the excellence of CSU Rams. I have witnessed the passion and commitment of the ROTC leadership, and I'm thrilled to know that you will be joining their ranks in the service of our nation. We're grateful for the leadership and service of Colonel Greg Young, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Weiss, and their cadres. Cadets, these professionals have shown excellence and dedication in their leadership and have elevated your experience. There are many things you will likely miss after this experience is over, and while you might not always miss your regular morning PTs, you'll most certainly miss the camaraderie in those early mornings with your fellow cadets. To accomplish this rank, you undertook rigorous preparation in both the academic arena and the ROTC program. You've cultivated leadership, physical fitness, teamwork, knowledge, honor, and discipline. As you reflect upon the challenges and demanding requirements of your combined CSU and ROTC curriculum, Remember that you possess unique skills from your training, and you join an elite group of alumni from CSU. Remember to show gratitude to those who have supported you in this arduous journey. I'm certain that many strong influences have guided your development: parents, grandparents, guardians, relatives, siblings, friends, and they too are honored in this celebration. Be sure to let them know how much their support has meant to you. But after you've done that, take a moment and celebrate yourself and your fellow cadets. The future can wait a minute while you reflect and enjoy this moment and all you have achieved. Thank you for training to be the next generation of our military leadership. Thank you for modeling lifelong learning and service to our great nation and society. We are so honored that you chose CSU's ROTC program. Be safe, do great work, and please keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gelczynski. Now I would like to welcome Colonel Greg Young, Professor of Aerospace Studies.
Hello, everyone. President Parsons, esteemed luminaries, welcome again. Along with family members and friends of our graduates and commissionees, we can't thank you enough for celebrating with us today and creating such a memorable event for the nation's newest second lieutenants. Super excited for you all. To our commissionees, congratulations. Today, your education and rudimentary training come to a close. Tomorrow, your journey toward a career in the service of our nation begins in earnest. If this were a John Wick movie, you would have just reached the building, and now you have to fight your way up dozens of flights of stairs to fight the final bad guy on the roof. Not too dissimilar to the sheer volume of speakers you've had to get through over the last couple of days to get to this moment. So enjoy it, but strap in a couple more speakers. It may be a bumpy ride. If I were you, good. I've got one fan, yes. If I were using the language of my grandparents, I'd be praising you for going into the service. That was a phrase that got thrown around a lot as I was a kid. Were you in the service? Where'd you serve? Were you nervous in the service? I like this phrase because it denotes two things. First, it ties you to the profession of arms. You're joining a branch of the military, as you know, AKA the armed services. No kidding. Secondly, the word service itself denotes action, the very act of service, of placing oneself in a subordinate position relative to the needs of others, elevating the needs of the many over the needs of the few. It's no surprise then that selfless service, as mentioned earlier, is one of 7 Army values, and service before self is an Air Force core value. Think about those concepts from both angles. Putting the needs of your service, the Army, the Air Force, before yourself. And secondly, placing the very act of selfless service to your nation, to your teammates, before self. So whether you view service as a verb or a noun, I want you to consider that service is not something you did, past tense, or something you joined, nor is it a metaphysical state for you to achieve, and it definitely isn't something, well, many people should thank you for in parking lots, although they will. Service is the very act of becoming. The infinite towards you will work. The concept of service is an aspirational value that you'll live up to every day that you wear your uniform. Now, if you haven't already experienced this with some of your high school friends, you'll eventually experience it with some of your peers from college and many people who serve early on in your journey in the military. For some, the stories will not change for 20 years. The same teams, the same deployment, the same tall tales, the same glorious nothing. A static moment, or monument rather, to one defining moment, polished until it shines bright like a diamond. The playoff game that became legend, the degree that became an identity, the job that became a personality. One season of life captured in memory that you hang on the wall of your mind and you mistake for the whole museum. Now, this is human nature. We find something that feels like us or like what we want to be, and we hold on to it tightly. And we do this because becoming is terrifying. Having already become feels safe. But these things that you've done now at 21, 22, 23, graduating, commissioning, making it through the ROTC pipeline, going to your branch, going to your AFSC, these are not who you are. This is just where you started. The university, the Army, the Air Force, the career, these are not the destination. These are the first chapter of a hopefully very long book that represents your life. Unfortunately, some people read the first chapter over and over and over again and call it a life. But the question isn't who you are or even who you were. The question is, who are you becoming? Soldier, airman, sir, ma'am, husband, wife, mom, dad, Mr., Mrs., and even dearly departed eventually. These, among many others, are all possibilities in your future. But for today, you only need focus on serving. And to that end, speaking of John Wick, I think he said it best, I have served. I will be of service. And so shall you, and so shall you. Congrats. Okay, without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce today's presiding officer, Lieutenant General Retired Rick Moore. Lieutenant General Moore is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, where he earned his commission in 1993 with a degree in chemistry. He later earned a Master of Engineering Management from Washington State University and completed senior developmental education at both Air Force Command and Staff College and the Air War College. Lieutenant General Moore began his flying career in the KC-135 Stratotanker and has since commanded at the squadron and wing levels throughout a distinguished career in Air Mobility Command. His leadership assignments include command of the 463rd Airlift Wing at Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, and service as a vice wing commander of the 62nd Airlift Wing at Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington. He has also held numerous key positions at the Pentagon and on the Joint Staff, shaping strategy, force planning, and global mobility operations at the highest level. But perhaps most notably, he commanded the 86th Airlift Wing at Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany, where he gave a certain rugged yet boyishly handsome Colonel Young command of an operations group. Sir, I'm so touched that you put that in your biography. That really means the world to me. Wow. Just for you, buddy. Oh, gosh. Just really wasn't expecting. I brought this napkin just for that bit right there. That was the whole thing. Sorry, it's not a napkin, it's a handkerchief. General Moore culminated his 32-year career as Chief for Plans and Staff. Nope, we're going to start that over. As Chief of Staff for Plans and Programs at Headquarters Air Force, where he directed the development and integration of the Air Force's future force structure, programs, and resource allocation plans, so we all know who to blame. He is a command pilot with 5,000 flying hours in the KC-135, the C-5, the C-17, and of course the venerable C-130J. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General Retired Rick Moore. The floor is yours, sir.
All right. First of all, President Parsons, thank you for being here with us, and other distinguished guests. Kristen, thank you for making the trip with me today. The folks on the stage, thank you for all of this. For the folks in the room who have dedicated their lives to academics, I would really like a passing grade on this speech tonight. Thank you, thank you. And for the new lieutenants, congratulations. This is one of the coolest days that there is. I'm super excited for you. I should make note that airmen and soldiers actually have one really important thing in common. Does anybody know what it is? They all started off at the Air Force recruiter. Okay. Really bad plan to fill both of a pilot's hands and then expect him to talk, but we'll see what we can come up with. Best day of Kate Middleton's life, by the way, the day she married a pilot. Why do we need you? I suppose we could actually take one step back and say, do we need you? The answer to the first question is because we're going to see that the world is still full of bad people. And the only thing that keeps them in check, it's us. Do we need you? Categorically, yes. And we've never needed you more than right now. Anybody know who this is? Anybody? Okay, Eisenhower, it's a great answer. It's wrong, but it's a great answer. So we'll come back to this at the end. All right. I hope you've been taught here. Always start with strategy. The capstone strategy in this series is the National Security Strategy. It comes once per administration. It came out just last November. And then right underneath that is the National Defense Strategy. This comes out every 4 years, and this version came out in January. And the reason I bring this up is because you might think that our perspective on the world has changed, that things are different now. Unfortunately, they're not. It still calls out the big four: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Everybody knows there's a thing in Iran right now, right? We might not have Iran for very much longer, at least not in its present form. North Korea, the leader of North Korea is just kind of keeping his head down, trying to make sure he doesn't follow Maduro or the Ayatollah. But really what we're talking about today, it's actually China. China in the strategy is the pacing threat. So why do we need you? We need you because the pacing threat is a really, really big military problem to solve. We think of China as a place of learning, as a place of ancient wisdom. The Chinese trace their kind of strategic thinking and their military thinking in particular all the way back to the Warring States period, 5th century BC. This is going to come back a couple of times today. 5th century BC, this is where Taoism came from. It's where Confucianism came from. Some of the best military writers ever. The Art of War by Sun Tzu came from the Warring States period, 425 BC. But interestingly, the Chinese have a little bit different way of looking at the world than Westerners do. They tend to have more of a concept of ends justify the means rather than a morals-based, rules-based interpretation of the world. What that means is if they want it bad enough, they're going to go for it. And they don't care what's in the way, and they certainly don't care about international norms or the laws of armed conflict. What is it that they want to go for? It's Taiwan. There's one piece of unfinished business from the time of Mao, one, and it's reunification of Taiwan with mainland China. We in the West don't have a concept of tenacity. We have fairly short attention spans. Not so with China. The very first thing Xi Jinping thinks of when he gets up in the morning and the dead last thing he thinks about before he goes to bed, it's Taiwan. And the only reason he doesn't do it, by the way, is because we are in his way. You will soon be in his way. By the way, Taiwan, about 90 miles off the coast of China. There is one little island claimed by Taiwan that's 10 kilometers off the coast of China. Cuba from the United States, 90 miles. Do we think if China wanted Cuba and we put the entire weight of the U.S. government, not just the U.S. military, but the U.S. government against stopping them from doing it, that they could pull it off? No chance. But that's what we're trying to do. 9,500 miles away. That's the problem, and that is why we need you. Anybody want to refute the assertion that this conflict has actually already started in cyber? Tens of thousands of attacks a day. China will go when they think the chances of success are something better than about 8.5 chances out of 10. It's not a perfect number, but about 8.5 chances out of 10. They have huge spreadsheets that all boil down to the chance of success. Xi Jinping will not go if he doesn't think he can do it. In a socialist society, if you start a war and lose, you tend to lose your job. And when you lose your job in a socialist society, you tend to become unalive. He won't take that chance. This is why we need you. You are the reason that he doesn't go. This is why. He's told his military he wants them to be ready by 2027. We're sitting here in the middle of 2026. Time is drawing close. And by the way, he'll want this done by 2032. Why? Because he turns 80 in 2033. Longevity in his family, not a problem. But 8 in Chinese thinking is every bit as auspicious as the color red, and he will want his 80s to be lucky. So we have about 5.5 years of really, really intense risk. That's why we need you. What do they think of us? What do the Chinese think of us? We're not talking about Chinese people, by the way. We're talking about the Chinese Communist Party. Any idea what percentage of Chinese people belong to the Chinese Communist Party? About 10%. It's only the very elites of the country that belong to the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, there are more Protestants in China than there are members of the Chinese Communist Party. That's actually who we're talking about, just to be clear. What do they think of us? What do they think of the West? They think that we're in terminal decline and there's nothing we can do to stop it. They believe that their star is rising and that ours is declining. If you read the news, maybe they have a point. In any case, we don't believe that about the U.S. military. We believe that the U.S. military is rapidly modernizing, rapidly increasing in size, rapidly increasing in budget. The budget that the president just submitted was $1.45 trillion. Any idea where that number comes from? Our GDP is $29 trillion, it's 5% of GDP. That's what he has been hounding European partners, South Korea, Japan, to get to. That's what he submitted for our budget. It's a 44% increase over last year. It's a bigger increase than the Reagan buildup. You have to go back to before World War II to see a budget increase like the one we just saw. We in the military are not declining. We're modernizing, we're getting bigger, and we're getting stronger. The president just went to China. A couple of quotes. I love China. Good for us. I've made a lot of money with the Chinese. He took 30 CEOs from America with him. It was all about business. He is, as we all know, a businessman. I understand the Chinese mind. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it is possible. I would ask that each of you dedicate some portion of your professional development to understanding the Chinese mind. They are our adversary, and if you understand how they think, you can understand how they're going to act. You cannot do one without the other. He made some very pointed comments. I've cherry-picked this to be a little bit humorous here, but he did make some very pointed comments towards Xi Jinping. But Xi Jinping made some really pointed comments back, talking about Taiwan. If it's handled properly, we can be okay. If it's not, we're going to fight. This is pretty strong rhetoric in diplomatic terms. The very first thing Xi Jinping thinks about in the morning and the dead last thing he thinks about before he goes to bed is Taiwan. What's in his way? You are. This one I love. The world has reached a crossroads. Can China and the United States overcome the Thucydides trap? Thucydides was a historian, perhaps the first modern historian. He was writing about the Peloponnesian Wars between Athens and Sparta. Interestingly, in the 5th century BC. Fascinating that Xi Jinping would pick a Western reference when the art of war came from the very same time period. But he picked a Western reference. And the Thucydides trap says that when there's a rising power, war is likely to erupt between the current hegemon, the current single power, and the rising power. In the Peloponnesian War, it was Athens. Sparta was the established hegemon, Athens was rising, and they wound up at war. Interestingly, the reference that Xi Jinping chose, the rising power lost. Just saying. Okay, so Graham Allison at Harvard did a study on this and looked back 500 years at all the times when this had occurred. 16 of them. 12 times it ended in war. Two things to take out of that. First of all, war is not inevitable. Diplomacy and statesmanship can avoid war. However, history tells us that war is more likely than not. And if it comes, that's why we need you. What do dictators do when they start to worry about their legacy? In China in 1955, word went around that Mao wasn't necessarily still revolutionary enough. Mao, obviously, supposed author of the Little Red Book. This is a real one from the 60s. It's in simplified Chinese, so I'll commend it to someone who can handle that to read it. Word went around that Mao wasn't revolutionary enough. So what did he do? He implemented the Great Leap Forward. He collectivized all the farms, he gave the peasants quota, he froze them in place, and he expected that all would be well. In World War II, we killed 30,000 people a day for 6 years. 42 million people lost their lives in World War II. 42 million. The Great Leap Forward, in just 2 years, 55 million peasants starved to death for no reason whatsoever then Mao was worried about his legacy. 125% of the casualties of World War II died from starvation to support the legacy of a dictator. That's what happens when dictators start to worry about their legacy. This is Ukraine. This is what happens when Putin has started worrying about his legacy. Putin, also an author. First person, Vladimir Putin's book. I'm sure it's quite good. Haven't read it. Don't plan to. Putin wants to be on the wall beside Lenin and Stalin. I think he actually deserves that. Everybody's favorite Stalin quote, the death of one is a statistic. Sorry, the death of one is a tragedy. The death of a million, statistic. I think Putin deserves that. He has completely destroyed a fully functioning independent democracy of 42 million people. It will take decades and trillions of dollars to rebuild Ukraine. Looks like the tide may be turning in Ukraine's favor right now, but nevertheless, this is what dictators do when they start to worry about their legacy. What will Xi Jinping do when he starts to worry about his legacy? This is why we need you. We don't know what he will do. He's also an author, by the way. Not exactly sure what the title of his book is because it's in Chinese. You can see it's still shrink-wrapped. No plan to read that one either, but I'm sure it's quite good. We don't know what he'll do when he starts worrying about his legacy. But I do know what will stop him from doing something really, really awful. It's you. Thank you for what you're about to do. It is going to be sensational. I never imagined when I walked across the stage at the Air Force Academy that I would hang up my uniform 32 years later. But it was absolutely amazing, and I wish for every one of you the most brilliant career ever. It's going to be awesome. Okay, before we close this out, I feel compelled to offer a piece of advice. When I was a Lieutenant Colonel Select, I was working at the Pentagon. I was the aide-de-camp for Admiral John Bastiani. He was the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Kristen and I didn't have kids yet, and so when I had to work an event, frequently she would show up at the end and we would have dinner or whatever. So I had worked an event at the Willard Hotel in DC. It's an old historic hotel, one of the coolest places ever, and they have a restaurant called the Willard Room. It's one of my favorite restaurants and actually one of my favorite rooms in DC. So I worked the event, Kristen was there for dinner, and it was time for assignments. And I was all excited. It looks like I'm going to get hired to Charleston. I'm going to be a C-17 DO, and it's going to be great. And Kristen looked at me and said, "You're an idiot." Wasn't the first time I'd heard this, but I did have to ask why on this particular occasion we were having this conversation. And she said, "You're working for the #2 ranking military member in the United States. You're flying around the world on a private jet, meeting heads of state, and all you can talk about is what's next. Why are you wishing your time away?" So the piece of advice I would offer actually came from my wife, not from me, but don't wish your time away. Command, leadership, supervision, participation, like nobody in the world gets to do what we get to do. It's a humongous honor, but it's also a lot of fun. Don't lose yourself in what's next. Revel in the time that you have. Enjoy the folks that are working for you. Enjoy your peers. Enjoy the things you can learn from your leaders. But please, for the love of Pete, don't wish your time away. Okay, who is this? So all the leaders in the room always say Eisenhower. Of course, it's a picture of Eisenhower, but it isn't about the leader. In this case, it's about the follower. The guy with the number 23 cowbell around his neck is a guy named Jim Martin. And this is June 4th, 1944. D-Day was supposed to be on June 5th, but the weather was horrific. And so it got delayed until what we now know would be D-Day, June 6th. But this is June 4th. Eisenhower's out meeting with these folks, and Operation Overlord was the big invasion across the English Channel, hundreds of ships, biggest armada ever put together. But early in the wee hours of the morning before was Operation Neptune. We put 11,000 guys, just like Jim Martin, into 3,000 C-47s, DC-3s. We flew them across the English Channel in the dark of night and dropped them on the Cotentin Peninsula. It's immediately to the west of the D-Day beaches. Their mission was to cut the peninsula in half and isolate the Germans to the north. The Germans to the north held the port of Cherbourg, and it was the only port in that part of France that could handle big ships and heavy equipment. We had to get gas, we had to get ammunition, we had to get tanks, we had to get trucks, we had to get all of that stuff ashore, and the place to do it was Cherbourg. And so their mission was to cut the Cotentin Peninsula in half so that we could run the Germans out to the north and have that port. They didn't know if they could do it. They'd never practiced it. They had no idea if they were going to live or die. Many of them, there's a river that runs across the Cotentin Peninsula called the Merdere River. Many of them landed in that river with all their gear on, and they went to the bottom, and they're there to this day. But those that didn't were geniuses. They built themselves into units of fighting size. They found out where the other units were, and they succeeded in taking the port of Cherbourg against all odds. But at this moment, their lives were uncertain. Eisenhower, by the way, in the breast pocket of his jacket, had a handwritten note written in pencil, dated June 5th, which was supposed to be D-Day. And it said, "Our landings in the Cherbourg area of France have failed to gain a sufficient foothold, and I have removed the troops. My decision, first person, my decision to attack at this particular time and place was based on the best intelligence available. The troops, the air, and the Navy have done all that bravery and dedication to duty could ask. If any blame attaches to the action, it is mine alone." Can you imagine what went through his mind as he wrote in his own hand a letter accepting the failure of D-Day, the biggest military armada ever put together? The note is in the archives in D.C. We still have it. I can only imagine what was going through his head. So I have a colleague, his name is D. Mewborn. He's a retired 3-star, well, I mean a Navy one, but anyway. He retired as the Deputy Commander of U.S. Transportation Command, but when he was a 1-star, he was the Commodore of the USS Eisenhower Strike Group. And every ship in the Navy has a lady of the boat. And the lady of the USS Eisenhower was Mamie Dowd Eisenhower, Eisenhower's granddaughter. And Admiral Mewborn had his headquarters on the carrier, on the Eisenhower, and she was in his stateroom, and this picture was on the wall. And she said, "You know, Dee, that picture's one of my biggest regrets." And he said, "Why?" And she said, "When I was a little girl, I played the piano. And this picture was on our piano, and every time I practiced, I saw it. And I always wondered what my grandfather was saying, and he was still alive. But I never asked him." And Admiral Mewborn said, "Would you like to know?" And into the stateroom walked Jim Martin. For the 70th anniversary of D-Day, he jumped out of a C-47 onto the Iron Mike drop zone at St. Mary-Glace on the Cotentin Peninsula. He passed away about 2.5 years ago. We've lost the greatest generation now, unfortunately. But she asked Jim Martin, "What was my grandfather saying to you?" And he said, "You know, the caption that's always gone along with this was total victory, nothing less, total victory, nothing less." That was Eisenhower's mantra. But that wasn't what he was saying. He knew we were scared to death. And all he was trying to do was take our minds off of what was happening. Sometimes your folks need to hear your mantra over and over and over again. They need to hear your goals, they need to hear your vision, they need to hear your guidance. But sometimes they need you to have the emotional intelligence to understand that they just need to have their minds taken off of what's directly at hand. So Jim Martin said, "Your grandfather asked me what I like to do. I told him I like to fly fish. So he was telling me how to tie the perfect fly." A boss will give you their mantra no matter what. A leader understands when something different is called for. You will all leave here today as leaders, and this is what we ask of you. We need you, and we need you now. I would love to take questions. I'll do it after the ceremony. For now, we have a little bit of business to take care of. We will mint some new second lieutenants. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Lieutenant General Moore. Upon the occasion of commissioning, every cadet recites the United States military oath of office. It is a combination of constitutional requirement, historical influence, and centuries-old custom. Several concepts still resonate in the oath taken today: a call to a higher power, a statement to perform to the best of one's ability, a sense of honor, and an acknowledgement of the consequences to our nation and way of life of failing to live up to this obligation. The oath represents more than a simple ceremonial formality. Rather, it provides a foundation for leadership decisions. It is the overarching guidance and standard of moral conduct to which every officer must adhere. It serves to guide officers when they find themselves in difficult situations. On June 1st, 1789, the first law of the United States of America established the oath requiring military officers to support and defend the Constitution. The Founding Fathers agreed upon the importance of ensuring that officers promise their allegiance, and although the wording has changed several times over the last two centuries, the basic foundation has stood the test of time. Today's oath is the very same oath taken by every officer since July 11th, 1868. Furthermore, the pinning of the second lieutenant rank is a visible sign of an officer's commitment to the presidential appointment. While an officer's rank is a symbol of their achievements and responsibilities, it also serves as a reminder of the family, friends, and foundational support network that helped these lieutenants arrive at today's ceremony. In addition to the oath of office and the pinning of rank, a traditional part of today's ceremony is the first salute, a time-honored tradition within the military that dates back to the early British regiments in colonial America. In years past, newly commissioned British officers were assigned an enlisted soldier to train them, teach them their regiment's history and traditions, and to ensure that their equipment met the appropriate standards. Grateful officers often showed their heartfelt gratitude by informally compensating the enlisted soldier with a small sum of money. This tradition is carried on today by newly commissioned officers providing the enlisted member rendering their first salute with a silver dollar. At this time, we will provide the oath of office, pinning of second lieutenant ranks, and first salute to commission each of our newest officers. We ask that all uniformed members in the audience please stand whenever the oath of office is being administered. As a reminder, today is a momentous occasion and an excellent opportunity for photographs. We encourage all family and friends to move around freely and capture these priceless moments. Without further ado, let us commission our officer candidates. Will Cadets Michael Ferdigalov, Kenneth Knapp, Kylie Rapecki, Scott Rapecki, Tanner Shane, Jacob Waskey please come forward? Administering the oath of office for these soon-to-be second lieutenants will be Lieutenant Colonel retired Matthew Tillman.
Cadets, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. Or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully. Discharge the duties. Of the office upon which I'm about to enter. I am proud of you, lieutenants. Congratulations.
We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks and administer their first salute to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Thomas Lewin, Wallo Maldonado Flores, Luke Holloway, Tommy Verstrati please come forward? We invite the officers administering the oath of office for these cadets to come forward at this time. Administering the oath of office for Cadet Lewin will be Captain Retired Mark Lewin. Administering the oath of office for Cadet Maldonado Flores will be Lieutenant Colonel Retired Miguel Flores. Administering the oath of office for Cadet Holloway is Major Retired Jacob Arnold. Administering the oath of office for Cadet Verstrati will be Captain Riley Kanayan.
I state your name. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend. I will support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Support and defend against all enemies. The Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies. Against all enemies. Faith and allegiance to the same. And I will bear faith and allegiance to the same. Without any mental reservation. Without any mental reservation. That I will well and faithfully disobey. And that I will well and faithfully so help me God. Of the office on all proud of you, my God.
We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks and administer their first salute to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Mariah Langley, Cole Stock, William White, and Alvina Yaboa please come forward? We invite the officers administering the oath for these cadets to come forward at this time. Administering the oath of office for Cadet Langley is Colonel Retired Michael McLaughlin. Administering the oath of office for Cadet Stock is Captain Seth Stock. Administering the oath of office for Cadet White is Major Retired Jack White. And administering the oath of office for Cadet Yaboa is Second Lieutenant Karen Hyken. We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks and administer their first salute to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Jackson Campbell, Sebastian Trujillo, Joshua Y. please come forward? Administering the oath of office for Cadets Campbell, Trujillo, and Y will be Captain Kyle Burns.
Obligation freely. discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations.
We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks and administer their first salute to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Ashley McGee and Vincent Deerenforth please come forward? Administering the oath of office for Cadet McGee and Cadet Deerenforth will be Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Weiss.
Discharge the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter. So help me God. Second Lieutenant Ashley McGee.
We invite the friends and family that will pin on their new ranks and administer their first salute to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Mason Birch, Luke Both, Cordelia Bolus, Eric Dersham, and Soliana Doutrick please come forward? Administering the oath of office for these soon-to-be second lieutenants will be Lieutenant General Retired Richard Moore.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations.
We invite the friends and family that will pin on their new ranks to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Gerard Garcia, Alexander Hill, Grace Ermisher, Darcy Keown, and Jack Kellerman please come forward? Administering the oath of office for these soon-to-be second lieutenants will be Lieutenant General Retired Richard Moore.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations.
We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Christopher Lambert, Tyler Lindley, Emma Miller, Reeve Miller, and Zoe Meyer please come forward. Administering the oath of office for these soon-to-be second lieutenants will be Lieutenant General Retired Richard Moore.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Christopher Todd Lambert. Having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force.
Having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
Of the office upon which I am about to enter.
of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will Cadets Dixon Sherpa, Autumn Steens, Luke Tolliver, and Eric Weiskircher please come forward. Administering the oath of office for these soon-to-be second lieutenants will be Lieutenant General Retired Richard Moore.
Okay, we saved the best for last. Let's bring it home. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations.
We invite the family and friends that will pin on their new ranks to please come forward. Please join me in congratulating this group of new second lieutenants. Will all of our new second lieutenants please stand? Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating our newest second lieutenants. Please be seated. At this time, we will individually recognize all of our new second lieutenants and present them with their service-specific commissioning certificates and coins. That is cue for the first row. Second Lieutenant Mason Birch earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a pilot trainee at Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Mason Birch. Second Lieutenant Luke Both earned a Bachelor of Science in General Psychology at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as an intelligence officer at Goodfellow Air Force Base, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Luke Both. Second Lieutenant Cordelia Bolas earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as a Nuclear and Missile Operations Officer at Vandenberg Space Force Base, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Cordelia Bolas. Second Lieutenant Jackson Campbell earned a Bachelor of Arts in Economics at the University of Northern Colorado. He'll begin his career in the United States Army Reserve as a logistics officer at Fort Lee, Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Jackson Campbell. Second Lieutenant Eric Dersham earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Accounting at the University of Northern Colorado. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a pilot trainee at Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Eric Dersham. Second Lieutenant Soliana Doutrick earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as an intelligence officer at Goodfellow Air Force Base, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Soliana Doutrick. Second Lieutenant Michael Ferdigalov earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as an infantry officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Michael Ferdigalov. Second Lieutenant Gerard Garcia earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a Nuclear and Missile Operations Officer at Vandenberg Space Force Base, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Gerard Garcia. Second Lieutenant Alexander Hill earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a Nuclear and Missile Operations Officer at Vandenberg Space Force Base, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Alexander Hill. Second Lieutenant Luke Holloway earned a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Biology at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as a Field Artillery Officer at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Luke Holloway. Second Lieutenant Grace Ermisher earned a Master of Science in Tourism Management at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as a Logistics Readiness Officer at Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Grace Ermisher. Second Lieutenant Darcy Keown earned a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as an Office of Special Investigations Officer at Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Darcy Keown. Second Lieutenant Jack Kellerman earned a Bachelor of Arts in History at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a pilot trainee at Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Jack Kellerman. Second Lieutenant Kenneth Knapp earned a Bachelor of Arts in History at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as an infantry officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Kenneth Knapp. Second Lieutenant Mariah Langley earned a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Army as an aviation officer at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Mariah Langley. Second Lieutenant Christopher Lambert earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a pilot trainee at Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Christopher Lambert. Second Lieutenant Tyler Lindley earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as an RPA pilot at Joint Base San Antonio, Randolph, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Tyler Lindley. You're doing great. Second Lieutenant Thomas Lewin earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as an infantry officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Thomas Lewin. Second Lieutenant Ashley McGee earned a Bachelor of Science in Health and Exercise Science at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Army as an aviation officer at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Ashley McGee. Second Lieutenant Wallo Maldonado Flores earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as an infantry officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Wallo Maldonado Flores. Second Lieutenant Emma Miller earned a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as an Office of Special Investigations Officer at Los Angeles Space Force Base, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Emma Miller. Second Lieutenant Reeve Miller earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a Nuclear and Missile Operations Officer at Vandenberg Space Force Base, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Reeve Miller. Second Lieutenant Zoe Meyer earned a Bachelor of Science in Biological Science at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as a contracting officer at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Zoe Miller. Second Lieutenant Kylie Rapecki earned a Bachelor of Science in Animal Science at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Army Reserve, attending veterinary school at Ross University in the Caribbean. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Kylie Rapecki. Second Lieutenant Scott Rapecki earned a Bachelor of Science in Chemical and Biological Engineering at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army Reserve as an engineer at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Scott Rapecki. Second Lieutenant Tanner Shane earned a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the Texas Army National Guard as an infantry officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Tanner Shane. Second Lieutenant Diction Sherpa earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as an acquisition officer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Dick Shincherpa. Second Lieutenant Cole Stock earned a Bachelor of Arts in History at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as a military police officer at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Cole Stock. Second Lieutenant Autumn Steens earned a Bachelor of Science in Human Development and Family Studies at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Air Force as an acquisition officer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Autumn Steens. Second Lieutenant Vincent Deerenforth earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army Reserve as a logistics officer at Fort Lee, Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Vincent Deerenforth. Second Lieutenant Sebastian Trujillo earned a Master of Public Policy and Administration at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as a military intelligence officer at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Sebastian Trujillo. Second Lieutenant Luke Tolliver earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Marketing at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as an air battle manager at Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Luke Tolliver. Second Lieutenant Tommy Verstrati earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as an armor officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Tommy Verstrati. Second Lieutenant Jacob Waskey earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as a military intelligence officer at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Jacob Waskey. Second Lieutenant Eric Weiskircher earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Air Force as a Combat Systems Officer at Naval Air Station Pensacola, Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Eric Weiskircher. Second Lieutenant Joshua Y. earned a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the United States Army as an infantry officer at Fort Benning, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Joshua Y. Second Lieutenant William White earned a Bachelor of Arts in History at Colorado State University. He'll begin his career in the Colorado Army National Guard as a Signal Corps officer at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant William White. Second Lieutenant Alvina Yaboa earned a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering and Chemical and Biological Engineering at Colorado State University. She'll begin her career in the United States Army Reserve as a logistics officer at Fort Lee, Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, Second Lieutenant Alvina Yaboa. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a moment to recognize a truly exceptional group of cadets, those who have distinguished themselves among the very best in their respective programs. When your name is called, please come forward to the stage and remain for recognition and a group photo. The RAM Battalion would like to recognize five cadets as distinguished military graduates. In Army ROTC, a distinguished military graduate is a cadet who ranks in the top 20% of their graduating class nationwide on the Order of Merit list. This distinction reflects sustained excellence, maintaining high academic standards, excelling in physical fitness, demonstrating exceptional leadership, and successfully completing advanced camp, while also embodying high moral character and military aptitude, fulfilling all ROTC requirements, and earning a baccalaureate degree. At this time, would Lieutenants Luke Holloway, Mariah Langley, Thomas Lewin, Ashley McGee, and Sebastian Trujillo please join us on stage. Now, Detachment 90 proudly recognizes two distinguished military graduates. These individuals have placed among the top 10% of Air Force ROTC cadets graduating nationally based on their academic and military performance, physical fitness, and comprehensive assessment of the National Distinguished Graduate Selection Board. Their performance reflects not only consistency, but a steadfast commitment to excellence across all areas of development. Would Lieutenant Cordelia Bolas and Lieutenant Emma Miller please join us on stage? Please join me in congratulating these outstanding cadets. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in one more big round of applause for all of our newest second lieutenants. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. On behalf of Colorado State University and the Army and Air Force ROTC programs, thank you for attending as we recognize the Army and Air Force's newest second lieutenants. Please join us in 10 minutes following the ceremony for cake and refreshments in the lobby. Now, new second lieutenants, in 20 minutes, please gather near the stage for a joint service photo. Please stand for the playing of the Army, Air Force, and Space Force songs and remain standing for the departure of the official party. Thank you, and have a great day.
Special authorization, thank you. Why is it so low? No. No one. I have one by yourself. Yeah, last night I woke up and my blood. On the back.
Wait, were you talking about when the music wasn't playing? Yeah. Yeah, no. Because I went down there and I'm like, am I going to ask an hour to go up there with no music, no accompaniment, just raw dog it? And she did it. Amen. Amen. Yeah, that was an outstanding.
It did, and so it was like, I swear to God.
After they go out there. What? Sure, I can hold it.
Or you, yeah.
Yeah. Hold it in the middle? Sure. Okay. Yeah, it was a rough start. It was a rough start. Other than that, I feel like yeah, it's just the script. I don't.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, I ain't colored me before Keo, so. But nah, you're good.
That makes sense.